The rain was already whispering her name when she stepped out of the black car. Lila Monroe had been dead for 7 years, at least on paper. Her reflection in the glass tower trembled like a ghost learning how to breathe again. They buried her in gossip, headlines, and whispers. Now she was back to own the language that killed her. Every camera flash on the street below looked like judgment, every face a rumor half remembered. She felt the weight of the city's pulse under her heels. Somewhere inside, her heart matched that rhythm, not of fear, but precision. If truth was power, then lies would become her gospel. Adrian Hale leaned against the boardroom window, the empire below glittering beneath him. He loved the sound of his own power, the city echoing back his name. But when the elevator chimed and she stepped in, something in the air changed. Lila didn't speak. She let silence say everything. For a heartbeat, Adrian saw the ghost of the woman he destroyed. "I want to watch and short Stewart, and he dancing while I'll." And then he realized, ghosts don't stare back like that unless they've come for something. Maya watched through the glass partition, her heart racing. She didn't know who this woman was, but the way Adrian's smile faltered told her enough. Power shifted in that moment, quietly, invisibly. Maya typed notes she couldn't send, each word trembling with curiosity and dread. The night deepened. Thunder rolled as if the city itself were restless. Lila stood by the window alone after everyone had left. She looked down at the glowing headlines on digital billboards, lies once told about her. Her reflection blended with the scrolling words: scandal, betrayal, disappearance. She whispered something to the glass, something only she would understand. A promise, or maybe a curse. Thomas Wren sat in a bar 2 blocks away, staring at an old photo of Lila on his phone. The photo that started it all. The bartender refilled his glass without asking. He'd thought she was gone forever, but now she was back. And the guilt he buried started clawing its way up. Outside, a digital billboard flickered with her name, and he whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." By morning, the storm had settled into whispers. Lila sat in her new office, a borrowed space with borrowed power. But every empire begins with stolen bricks. Her phone glowed with unread messages from journalists desperate for approval, producers begging for exclusives, interns chasing ghosts of relevance. She smiled. These were her new soldiers. The same gossip that buried her would now serve her. She typed slowly, deliberately. Run the story. No one questioned whose story it was anymore. Outside, the city blinked in obedience. Adrian Hale watched the morning headlines with unease. Stories were moving without his approval, voices shifting tone, loyalties bending. Somewhere, someone was rewriting his kingdom's script. He leaned back, cigarette trembling slightly between fingers trained never to show weakness. He'd built this empire from hunger and control. And now, control was vanishing word by word. Maya Rivera watched her inbox flood with strange new orders. Anonymous directives that somehow knew every hidden scandal before it surfaced. She hesitated before forwarding them to the newsroom. Whoever was pulling these strings was inside, but invisible. And when she walked past Lila's office that evening, she caught sight of her boss silhouetted against the window, the city glowing like an accomplice behind her. Maya realized she was looking at the ghost behind the curtain, and the ghost was alive. Thomas Wren had lived too long pretending his silence was redemption. But that day, when he saw Lila's name appear in the closed deal section of a trade report, he felt the world tilt. She wasn't just back. She was building something. He opened his laptop, hands trembling, and searched the archives he once guarded. Every headline, every betrayal, every lie. All roads led to the same woman. And for the first time, he didn't know if he feared her or admired her. That night, the newsroom erupted in whispers. A breaking story surfaced under a pseudonym, one that exposed the corruption of Adrian's inner circle. No one knew its source. Lila watched from her glass-walled office as the chaos unfolded. Her phone vibrated once, then went still. On her screen, a single message appeared. "They're looking for you." She smiled faintly, leaned back in her chair, and whispered to the darkness, "Let them look." The city outside flickered like a lie taking its first breath. The first whisper came from a blog no one respected, the kind that thrived on conspiracies. Lila Monroe lives. The words spread like static. Within hours, hashtags rose from digital graves, stories cross-linked, photos resurfaced. Lila sat alone in her office, watching her face appear on screen after screen, reborn by the same rumor mill that once destroyed her. She could have killed the story, deleted it, denied it, erased herself again. But instead, she let it breathe, because maybe the world needed to see her ghost before it believed her power. Adrian Hale's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reports from PR, editors, investors, panic disguised as professionalism. He scrolled through the story again, her name underlined in red, disbelief sinking into fury. If she was alive, everything he built on her ashes was threatened. He looked out over the city he once owned and realized how easily an empire trembles when built on someone else's silence. Maya Rivera couldn't keep quiet anymore. Every corner of the newsroom pulsed with gossip, every whisper a question she couldn't answer. She entered Lila's office, trembling, voice steady only out of necessity. "Is it true?" Lila didn't look up. She simply smiled, the kind of smile that forgives nothing but understands everything. "The truth," she said softly, "depends on who tells it." For the first time, Maya saw not a boss, but a story made flesh, and that terrified her more than any lie could. Thomas Wren watched the digital storm from his apartment, guilt rotting into awe. He remembered the night he leaked her secret years ago, the trembling hands that pressed send. And now the woman he buried was rewriting history, his included. He drafted an email, half confession, half warning, but hesitated before sending it. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she had always known. The world began to remember. Headlines turned into reckonings. Faces from the past resurfaced and whispers hardened into proof. Lila walked through the newsroom as phones rang off the hook, voices rising in panic and fascination. She didn't stop. Every flash, every question, every accusation, they were applause. As cameras turned toward her, she paused and said quietly, "I never died. You just stopped telling my story." The city roared in response, hungry for resurrection. Silence filled the boardroom before anyone dared to breathe. Lila Monroe stood at the head of the table that once belonged to Adrian Hale, her hands resting lightly on polished wood. Around her sat executives, lawyers, and shareholders who had built careers out of fear. She spoke with the calm certainty of someone who'd already won. "You don't have to like me," she said. "You just have to report to me." No one replied. Somewhere beyond the glass, the city glowed, waiting for its new voice to speak. Adrian Hale watched from a distance, his empire now hers. Every headline now carried her cadence, every broadcast her intent. He tried to call in favors, but doors closed quietly, one by one. Control was slipping like sand through his fingers. He poured himself another drink, staring at her image on television, the ghost who'd stolen his reflection. Maya Rivera moved through the new hierarchy like a shadow. Every story approved by Lila was sharper, more deliberate, truth sculpted to fit intention. Maya admired her brilliance, feared her precision, and pitied her solitude. She caught glimpses of Lila late at night in the editing bay, rewriting scripts line by line. It wasn't vengeance anymore. It was authorship, the kind that leaves no room for witnesses. Thomas Wren finally met her. The meeting was arranged under false pretenses, a consultation for a media expose. But the moment she entered, he knew she'd been expecting him. He tried to apologize, words failing against the gravity of her presence. Lila listened without emotion, eyes steady. When he finished, she simply said, "You can't undo a story once it's printed." Her tone wasn't cruel. It was final. The sound of a journalist turned judge. By the end of the week, the network was reborn. Lila's new campaign launched across every platform. A promise of truth, a performance of power. Cameras adored her. The world believed her. Yet in the quiet moments after each broadcast, she lingered in the studio alone, staring at her reflection on the black screen. For all her control, there was one thing she couldn't edit: the echo of who she used to be. And in that silence, she almost missed the sound of applause. The first crack was quiet. Lila approved a package that softened one fact and sharpened another. A tiny cut no one would feel until it bled. The newsroom moved like a machine, hands trusting orders, eyes trusting screens. She told herself it was for balance, for justice, for a world that never gave her any. The rush came fast, warm as stage lights, cold as rain on stone. She watched a rival's reputation buckle under a headline she designed to look inevitable. Her breath steadied. Her reflection in the dark glass nodded back like a partner who never argued. She thought of the night they buried her in rumor, and how clean the shovel felt now in her own hands. The story aired. Applause rose from numbers, not people. She closed the window on the source files and left one folder open. A reminder that power is a door you keep from closing. Somewhere, a voice of doubt whispered her name. She turned the volume down. Adrian watched the broadcast twice without sound. Only the captions moved, thin knives sliding under skin. He recognized the trick because he had taught it to a younger, brighter world that still feared him. Now the trick belonged to her. He paced his dark rooms and felt the city withdraw from his touch, as if it had learned a new language overnight. He opened an old contact list. Names that once answered on the first ring. Some numbers were dead. Some voices were careful. He felt the sting of it, then the plan forming behind his eyes like weather. If he could not stop her story, he would expose the hand that wrote it. He gathered scraps, timestamps, edit trails, the small fingerprints of ambition. He would not strike loud. He would strike clean. He pressed his palm to the window and watched his breath cloud the glass. A quiet oath written in fog. Maya found the edit notes buried under a harmless file name. A neat stack of choices that tilted truth while pretending to steady it. Each change was small, but together they leaned like a building in slow collapse. She stood in Lila's doorway and waited. The city hummed, the screens blinked, and Lila did not look up. "We crossed a line," Maya said, voice soft, spine unbending. Lila's calm did not crack. She spoke about outcomes, about fairness, about the weight of the old lies that once crushed her. Maya heard the ache and admired it, and still it sounded like a script meant to stop questions. She set the notes on the desk and felt her hands shake. She had followed Lila through storm and fire, grateful for a leader who made sense of noise. Now the silence between them felt heavy. "What do we become if this is the way?" Maya asked. Lila answered with a stare that felt like an order to forget. Thomas read the cease and desist 3 times before the room stopped listening. The letter was perfect, polite, and lethal. He could feel the fingerprints on every sentence, not ink, but intent. He thought of the night he betrayed her, and the long penance that followed. A life measured in small apologies that never reached their mark. He opened a draft titled, "What We Did to Lila," and stared at the blanking cursor like a heartbeat he might reclaim. The phone buzzed. An unknown number delivered a single line. "You publish, we publish you." He laughed once, a dry sound that startled him. He was not afraid of being ruined. He had already been living in the ruins. He saved the draft anyway, closed his eyes, and tried to remember the last clean sentence he had ever written. The special aired at 9. It moved like a sermon, clean cuts and careful music, a path designed for only one conclusion. Numbers surged, ads smiled, the city leaned toward the screen and swallowed what it was fed. Lila stood behind the camera after, hands steady, voice measured as she thanked the team. When the studio emptied, Maya remained. She said the name of the man the story had broken and asked if he was guilty enough to deserve it. Lila answered with data, with charts, with a sentence that began with the word necessary. The room felt colder. A red light on a forgotten tally lamp clicked once and died. Lila's reflection stared back from the dark monitor, a crown made of pixels and rain. She reached to turn the glass to black. Her fingers hovered. For the first time since she returned, the silence did not obey her. The backlash did not roar at first. It hissed. A tiny clip from the special surfaced online, then another, then the raw footage that did not match the final script. Edits circled like fingerprints in dust. Lila held the conference table with both hands as the room filled with screens replaying her choices. Words like manipulated and manufactured crawled under the door and sat in the chairs across from her. She spoke calmly to the team, asking for patience, for process, for context. Inside her chest, the beat was a drumline. Outside, the city shifted its weight, sensing a fall. She remembered the first rumor that killed her and tasted the same metal. This time, her name was on the other side of the headline. She told herself that truth was a shape you bend to reveal more of itself. The faces around her said something simpler. It was a shape you broke. Adrian seized the opening with a lover's timing. He called a press briefing dressed in regret and lit by righteousness. He spoke of standards, of the sacred duty of the press, of how power must be held to account even when it is draped in elegance. He never said her name. He did not need to. The crowd filled it in, a chorus happy to sing. As microphones leaned toward him, he offered files, timestamps, the breadcrumbs he had gathered in the blue hours. He looked straight into the lens and promised the public a reckoning. The room thrilled at the word. Outside, sirens threaded the traffic like needles through cloth. Watching from a monitor, Lila felt the cut land before the sound arrived. The man who buried her once had learned to bury with flowers. This funeral came with applause. Maya watched the comments flood like bad weather. Her inbox filled with questions she could not answer without tearing the roof off the house they built. She remembered the night she asked if they had become something else and felt the answer arrive late and heavy. She walked into Lila's office and placed a resignation letter on the desk. Words plain and spare. Lila looked at it, then at Maya, the only person who had ever stood close without flinching. "Don't do this," Lila said, voice small in the big room. "We can fix it." Maya shook her head, tears burning but unshed. "We fix it by telling the part we cut," she said. Silence stood between them like a third figure. Lila could not step around it. When Maya left, the door did not slam. It clicked, soft and final, a sound that would replay in Lila's dreams like a metronome. Thomas could not watch another careful lie hatch, not from her, not from anyone. He sent the essay at dawn, a clean document with ugly history, naming names including his own. He did not spare himself. He wrote the night he leaked her life, the years he hid, the letter that tried to scare him back into the dark. He pressed publish and felt the old world shatter like a dish dropped in a sink. The piece spread fast and naked. It told how the industry eats its wounded and crowns the hungriest survivor. It told how grief becomes a knife when the hand learns it loves the weight. He waited for the call that would end something. It came, ringless. A message from Lila with no words, only a link to his story and a single punctuation mark, a period. He understood. The sentence had ended, but not the cost. By nightfall, the empire trembled. Sponsors paused. Boards convened. The newsroom split into camps, some clinging to her brilliance, others counting exits. Lila stood in the studio, the place that once felt like a throne and now felt like a dock. She could confess and lose the crown, or double down and lose herself. The teleprompter glowed with a statement she had written and rewritten until it said nothing that could hurt and nothing that could heal. She heard rain on the roof, and the old rhythm returned. Breath. Silence. Breath. A memory arrived uninvited. Her first byline, clean and bright, a promise to tell what was true even if it cut the hand that held the pen. She looked at the camera and at her reflection. In the dark glass beside it, the light went green. Her mouth opened. Between the first word and the second, she chose. She did not read the statement. She looked into the lens and gave the city her name, her fault, her reason. Lila said she had bent the frame and called it justice, that she had mistaken the weight of pain for the proof of truth. She named the edits, the pressure, the appetite that clapped for blood, and called it courage. She said she would open the archives, submit to an outside audit, and step back from decisions that touched any story she had touched before. She did not dress her words in metaphors. She let them stand like bodies finally claimed. In living rooms and bars and cabs, people leaned closer. Some jeered. Some cried. Some felt the quiet relief that arrives when the lie stops asking to be believed. The red tally light faded. The studio went still. For a breath she felt light. Then the cost rushed back, heavy as rain on a coffin lid. She bowed her head once, not to beg, but to end the sentence. Adrian watched the confession like a man studying an old enemy's map and seeing new roads on it. He felt the flicker of triumph and then the colder thought, honesty can be strategy, and strategy can win. He phoned allies, promised steadiness, floated words like accountability and stewardship as if he had invented them. He drafted a counter-narrative that cast her as a pyromaniac, asking to supervise the fire brigade, yet the calls did not land the way they used to. The room on the other end sounded crowded with doubt. He opened a file marked with dates he had once buried, proof of his own pressure campaigns, and measured the risk of their escape. On another screen, her network announced the audit and published the edit logs she had named. He felt the floor tilt. Control, he understood, was not the same as safety. He turned off the lights and stared at his reflection until it looked like someone he could still defend. Maya returned at noon, not to reclaim a desk, but to set terms. She found Lila in the war room, surrounded by lawyers and screens. The air smelled of coffee and rain-wet coats. Maya said the audit needed teeth, that every correction must run in prime time, that sources wronged by edits should speak first, uncut. She spoke quickly, afraid the room would swallow her nerve. Lila listened without defense. She asked for the list, the order, the names that would hurt the most and heal the fastest. Something gentler moved between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the scaffolding of it. The team took notes. A schedule form. Lila signed every hard clause. Maya gathered the papers and met her eyes. "If we do this, we do it loud," she said. "We do it clean," Lila answered, voice low. Outside, a siren wailed and faded, as if the city exhaled. They began. Thomas arrived with a worn messenger bag and a face that looked like it had slept beside truth, and woken sore. He placed a flash drive on Lila's desk and said a source had kept records of Adrian's quiet threats, leveraged divorces, bought silences, a list of stories bent to protect the hand that fed the ads. He admitted he had almost sold it, then hated himself for the thought. Lila did not touch the drive at first. She asked who would break when it broke open. Thomas said names he had carried like stones. She told him the new rules. Verify, contextualize, let the harmed speak first. He nodded, surprised by the mercy of procedure. As he turned to go, he stopped and said he was sorry for the night he made her a headline. She said she was sorry for the nights she became the same machine. The apology did not heal. It cleared a place where healing might stand. The special aired on a Sunday, not as spectacle, but as repair. It led with the cuts they had made, and why, then, with the people those cuts had wounded. Lila spoke little. She moderated and yielded. Maya produced from the wings, insisting on pauses where silence could do its work. Thomas read a paragraph that named his part without softness, and when the segment on Adrian rolled, it was precise, unadorned. A ledger read aloud. Some viewers turned away. Some leaned in closer than ever. When it ended, Lila announced she was moving the newsroom to an independent trust, surrendering her voting power and salary until the audit finished and the reforms held. She thanked her team and the critics who refused to let her lie. The red light died. She stood very still. In the blackout that followed, she heard rain, her own breath, and the tender space after a verdict. She did not know if this was redemption. She knew it was the truth.